Good morning. It's lovely to be with you again. Today we're thinking a little bit about God being powerful. I don't know who you would call the most powerful person you know. Do you want to think about that for a moment? What makes somebody powerful? I took a photograph of myself this morning working out, and maybe your visions of being powerful are based on something like this. Is that your view of power? Being able to lift the heaviest weights you can think of. Or maybe it's something a little bit more subtle. Just think for a moment how authors have the most powerful imaginations and can draw you into their world as you read their books. Or how artists, or musicians, or photographers, or filmmakers have the power to make grown people either burst into tears or smile and laugh their heads off. There are different sorts of power, aren't there? Well, today we're thinking a little bit about God's power. There's a verse in the Old Testament from Jeremiah chapter 51 that says this: God made the earth by his power. He founded the world by his wisdom and stretched out the heavens by his understanding. When he thunders, the waters in the heavens roar. He makes clouds rise from the ends of the earth. He sends lightning with the rain and brings out the wind from his storehouses. And I don't know if you noticed about that verse. It wasn't just that God is strong, like this character who can lift everything, who could create the world. But it also talks about God being creative, making a diverse world, and showing his strength in the things that make a difference in our world, like thunder, lightning, water, rain, and so on. All these things come from God's creativity and can make a difference to people. Does it take strength to create the world in the first place and everything in it? Yes, of course. But does it take more strength to continue to hold the universe together and to look after the people in it? Yes, it does. Maybe that's where God shows his greatest power. Now, sometimes, of course, his power can make us rather scared. Our opening verse talked about a storm and lightning and thunder and winds. Those sort of things can make us very scared. I don't know what makes you particularly scared. If you sometimes get a little out of your depth, does it get on top of you and make your heart start to race? Let me have a little quiz with you. I want you to think, if you would, of the different levels of, I suppose, fear, you might call it. On the one hand, things that don't really affect you at all. They're at the bottom of the scale. And on the other hand, are things that have you scared witless. And see which end of the scale you would be in answer to these questions. So how scared were you on your first day at school? Whoops. I hope not too scared, somewhere nearer this end. You might have been a little bit out of your depth, but you perhaps very quickly made friends and were okay. Or imagine how scared you'd be if your teacher asked you a question and you don't know the answer. Maybe moving a little bit this way, but hopefully not too much. Because the only way we ever learn is when there are things that stretch us, when there are things that we don't know. It's not wrong not to know an answer. The key is that we're prepared to find out how to approach new things. But then there are other things, aren't there? How scared do you get if, say, a strange dog approaches you and starts growling at you? Yeah, that's a bit more scary. Not quite perhaps tearing your hair out, but it can get a bit worrying when you look for someone to help you. What about if you lose the people who are looking after you, your mum or dad or whoever it might be looking after you when you're in a crowded place? Now that starts to get really quite scary, doesn't it? You suddenly find you're on your own, you don't know where you are. What about when you wake up in the middle of the night and it's pitch black? Some people get very scared of the dark. It's not unusual. What about when there's thunder and lightning? Some people really hate that, and that can be really scary. You perhaps have to go and find someone else to help you out in those times. Well, let's go back to that story of Jesus calming a storm on the lake, because that was an occasion when even the disciples got really, really scared, but needed to learn something about Jesus' power, which was not just strength, but the power to make a difference in their lives. So do you remember how the story goes? It's there in Mark's Gospel. At the end of the day, Jesus and his disciples got into a boat to cross to the other side of the lake. Jesus lay down in one end of the boat and went right to sleep. When they were in the middle of the lake, a terrible thunderstorm came up. There was no time to get to shore. The wild wind blew the boat. The wet waves roared. Lightning flashed all around them. The disciples felt the water coming into the boat around their ankles. They, even though they were lots of seasoned fishermen amongst them, thought the boat was about to sink and they would drown. Eventually the disciples went to Jesus and woke him up, and they shouted over the storm, "Jesus, don't you care if we drown?" And we're told Jesus very quietly woke up, looked round at the wild wind and the wet waves, the crashing lightning, and he stood up and he calmly said, "Peace, be still." Hush, wind, calm waves. The lightning stopped, and suddenly everything went completely still. Just a moment of quiet. Imagine what it was like. Suddenly going from the fierce thunderstorm, everything crashing about, to some complete peace. No surprise. The disciples learned something that day about the power of Jesus, not just his ability, which was extraordinary. I mean, yes, winds do die down, but waves, no, they take ages to settle. But they also learned something about the way Jesus uses his power, because he used it to bring them calm and peace, as well as the storm. And they looked at one another and they said, "Jesus stopped the storm. He is someone special. His power is something special." So how do you think you would have felt if you'd been in that boat with Jesus when the lake became quiet? Well, you might have stopped being afraid of the wind and the waves, but you might have been a little bit wary of Jesus from there, because suddenly he'd shown you his immense power, which you perhaps haven't seen to quite that degree. How do you think you'd have felt when you realised just how powerful Jesus was, that he was showing us God's power in action? And how do you think you'll feel next time you come to face something that scares you, knowing that God is still in control and can be with you and make a difference to you in those circumstances? Perhaps you want to think, where might you need God's power in your life? What times can you turn to him and say a little prayer and recognise that he's with you when you're feeling scared or worried or concerned? Well, Jesus showed his power and protected his friends by calming the storm. And wonderfully, God is still able to protect us all today. One way God protects us is by giving us the opportunity to turn to him wherever we are, whatever we're doing, and say a little prayer. So perhaps we can just be quiet for a moment and I'll lead us in a prayer. Dear God, thank you that you're still as strong today, that you can still calm storms. Thank you that you have that incredible power, but you don't use it just for yourself, you use it for other people. You're the God who performs miracles. You display your power among the people, said that psalm. Thank you that you still use your power to help people So help us. Help us when we do get worried or scared. Help us with the things that are on our minds at the moment, the things that are getting us down, the frustrations we feel, the anxieties and worries. Please be close to us and give us your peace. Amen. Thank you all. See you another time.